Hey everybody, Josh here. So what if I told you that half of this video, the video that you're watching right now, is AI generated? You might be asking, what are you exactly talking about? Let me show you. So that painting on the wall, that doesn't exist. That trophy on that shelf over there, that doesn't exist either. In fact, all of this space around me doesn't actually exist. And what we're left with is this. This is the original shot that came out of my camera. Now, this is all made possible by Adobe Generative AI. So what is generative AI and what are people using it for? Generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence system capable of generating text, images, and other media in response to prompts. These AI models are trained on hundreds of thousands of samples of real-life data sets and then use those data sets to generate new creations. We've seen ChatGPT, we've seen DALL-E, but now with Adobe Generative AI, we actually get some real life use out of this thing, and I've sort of broken it down to 3 use cases. So number 1, object removal. This is like one of the most classic use cases for Photoshop, and before we had AI, we had to rely on tools like the clone stamp tool and maybe like content aware fill. But now with generative AI, the clone stamp tool is essentially dead because you can basically just select what you want to be deleted, click a button, and then that thing will be gone, just like that. So in this photo that I took in Japan, it's full of people and I was able to remove everybody from the scene and that only took me a couple of minutes. I was actually really impressed by how functional and usable and like accurate it is, even though it's in a beta stage. It's really impressive. So that's object removal. The second use case is object generation. So this feature is sort of hit or miss. A lot of the times I found it to give me some really corny looking results, like these robots and hot air balloons look kind of lame, but then other times it will really impress me. Like this trophy in the intro shot, while it may look simple, there's a couple of things that the AI had to get right in order to make it look believable. I also tried things like generating a puddle onto the ground. So in this motorcycle shot, you can see a lot of the generations don't really look that believable. Like it kind of looks like the tire is just floating on this puddle. Some of them are better than others. And I guess when you zoom out, it does look pretty good. But yeah, for the most part, I think this will improve as the AI gets better and better. So that is number 2, object generation. And then number 3, scene extension. So this by far was the one that blew me away. Like the way that it just blends the existing like real life pixels from your original photo into something that is completely AI generated, that is cool. Now, there's a lot of use cases for this, right? So for one, if you've ever tried to post like a landscape photo onto Instagram and wish that you could like extend the top and bottom to fill out the phone a little more, well, now you can do that. Or maybe you want to digitally extend your set like I did in the intro. That is pretty easy to do as well. So that is by far the most impressive thing about generative AI. But the one thing that I think Adobe struggles with here is human faces. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Human faces are one of the most hardest things for AI to like make look real. Like in this example, we can see that AI tries to generate something that resembles a face, but then it just ends up looking like a blur. And if we actually just go into like a blank canvas and try to generate a human face, it usually just comes out looking a little bit strange. And there's usually something that hints at you that tells you that it's not actually a real face. Which brings me to these 2 photos. Now recently there were these 2 photos that sort of went viral on the internet. There was this one photo of the Pope dripped out in Balenciaga, and then another photo of Trump getting arrested. So if you haven't already figured it out, these photos are of course AI generated, but they weren't generated with DALL-E or Adobe Generative AI. In fact, Adobe actually has this whole page of very specific user guidelines in which generative AI can be used. And you'll see that among many things like graphic violence, illegal activities, or just offensive content in general. It also prohibits impersonating other people or entities. So if you go into generative AI and you try to type out Donald Trump, it would just not work. So then the question is, how were these images made? The answer is Midjourney. Midjourney is another AI generation tool similar to DALL-E and Adobe Generative AI, except Midjourney generates images with even more realism and more detail and more fidelity than any of those other apps. So just to reiterate, all of the images that I'm about to show you are AI generated. So you can find a lot of these on either Instagram or Twitter if you just search the hashtag Midjourney. Some photos have a more stylized look, which is pretty sweet. But then there are also people generating photorealistic images that are now almost completely imperceptible from reality. Now, the way that Midjourney generates faces is what really is impressive, right? Because with AI generated faces, we typically get this like uncanny valley term that we use a lot. Midjourney gets rid of that completely. And in the right circumstances, with just the right amount of absurdity, you can convince the whole world that these images are actually real. Now, I can't understate how powerful this tool really is. You can literally upload a photo of your face or anybody else's face and then give it a reference photo and tell it to put that face onto that reference photo with a click of a button, and it does a perfect job. You can also tell it to generate photos off of certain movies or directors, like maybe if Harry Potter was directed by Wes Anderson, or maybe if Star Wars was directed by Wes Anderson. You might be wondering, wow, these would make for some really sick prints. And yeah, theoretically, you could take any one of these images, even if somebody else generated it, and print it out for yourself and hang it on a wall, and it wouldn't be illegal. US law states that copyright laws only apply to works created by humans. They don't apply to monkeys. They don't apply to artificial intelligence. So now we start getting into like the morality and the legality behind all of this. Who do these images belong to? And more importantly, how do we tell what's real and what's not? You can imagine in the legal system how easy it would be to sort of fake evidence or create evidence out of thin air. And also, I'm sure that the next thing that these very smart people are working on is AI generated video. So at that point, we'll be living in a human world with human art, also mixed in with AI art, AI generated text, AI generated photos, videos, and even music. And so right now, I think we're at a point where we're getting a glimpse into what this world is gonna look like with artificial intelligence, and it's all moving very, very fast.